Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. From this particular video, I'll be starting a new chapter in Income Tax Law and Practice 2, that is capital gains. So in this particular video, I'll explain about the theory of capital gains. What is capital gains? What are the types of capital gains? What are the rules and other things? So first, let us say what is a capital gain. So capital gain is a profit. Capital gain is a profit or the gain which you have got from transferring or sale of a capital asset. ಸೊ ಒಂದು ಕ್ಯಾಪಿಟಲ್ ಅಸೆಟ್ನ ಸೆಲ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಅದರಿಂದ ಏನಾದ್ರು ಪ್ರಾಫಿಟ್ ಅಥವಾ ಅದರಿಂದ ಏನಾದ್ರು ಗೇನ್ ಬಂದಿದ್ದರೆ ಅದನ್ನು ನಾವು ಕ್ಯಾಪಿಟಲ್ ಗೇನ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ ಕನ್ಸಿಡರ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ. ಹಾಗಿದ್ರೆ ಯಾವುದನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ ನಾವು ಕ್ಯಾಪಿಟಲ್ ಅಸೆಟ್ ಅಂತ ಕನ್ಸಿಡರ್ ಮಾಡೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ಸಪೋಸ್ ವೆನ್ ಅ ಪ್ರಾಪರ್ಟಿ ಈಸ್ ಇನ್ಹೆರಿಟೆಡ್, ದಟ್ ಮೀನ್ಸ್ from the family hierarchy, from your father, from your grandfather, if you have got the property, then that property cannot be considered as capital asset because it is only transfer has happened. There is no sale. You don't pay any money to your grandfather to get the property. It is only the transfer that is happening from your grandfather to you. So there is no sale. It is not considered as sale. That's why whatever the property it is inherited, that cannot be considered as capital asset. For example, there's one more thing. Your grandfather gives you the property which is not a capital asset. Suppose you will sell that properties to some other third party, then that becomes capital asset. ಯಾವ್ದಾದ್ರು ಪ್ರಾಪರ್ಟಿ ಇನ್ಹೆರಿಟ್ ಆಗಿದೆ ಅಂತ ಅಂದರೆ ಬೈ ವಿಲ್ಲಲ್ಲಿ ಬಂದಿದೆ ಅಂತ ಅಥವಾ ಗಿಫ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿ ಬಂದಿದ್ರೆ ಅಥವಾ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಒಂದು ಫ್ಯಾಮಿಲಿ ಟ್ರೀ ಪ್ರಕಾರ ಅದು ನಿಮಗೆ ಬಂದಿದ್ರೆ, ನಿಮ್ಮ ತಾತನಿಂದ ಅದು ನಿಮಗೆ ಬಂದಿದ್ರೆ ಅದನ್ನು ಕ್ಯಾಪಿಟಲ್ ಅಸೆಟ್ ಅಂತ ನಾವು ಕನ್ಸಿಡರ್ ಮಾಡೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ಯಾಕಂದರೆ ಯಾವುದೇ ರೀತಿಯ ಸೇಲ್ ನಡೆದಿರಲ್ಲ, ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ಅದನ್ನು ನಾವು ಕ್ಯಾಪಿಟಲ್ ಅಸೆಟ್ ಅಂತ ಕನ್ಸಿಡರ್ ಮಾಡೋದಕ್ಕಾಗಲ್ಲ. ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ರೀತಿ ಇದೆ, ಏನಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ನಿಮ್ಮ ತಾತಾಯಿಂದ ನಿಮಗೆ ಪ್ರಾಪರ್ಟಿ ಬಂದಿರುತ್ತೆ, ಅದು ಕ್ಯಾಪಿಟಲ್ ಅಸೆಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲ. ಅದು ನೀವು ಯಾವುದಾದ್ರು ಥರ್ಡ್ ಪಾರ್ಟಿಗೆ ಸೆಲ್ ಮಾಡಿದಾಗ ಅದು ಕ್ಯಾಪಿಟಲ್ ಅಸೆಟ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ಸಪೋಸ್ if we have to consider the transfer as a capital gain means there are certain conditions. The first one is there must be a capital asset. So whatever the asset you are selling should be capital asset. Next, transfer also should be of the capital asset. First thing, capital asset should be there. Second thing, that capital asset should be transferred. The third thing is transfer should happen in the previous year. Only if the transfer happens in previous year, that we will consider for the for the calculation of taxable gains in the assessment year. Next is such transfer of capital asset should result in profit or gain. What are the four conditions? First is capital asset. That capital asset should have been transferred. The transfer should have happened in previous year. From that transfer you should get any profit or gains. First ಒಂದು ಕ್ಯಾಪಿಟಲ್ ಅಸೆಟ್ ಇರಲೇಬೇಕು. ಆ ಕ್ಯಾಪಿಟಲ್ ಅಸೆಟ್ನೇ ಟ್ರಾನ್ಸ್ಫರ್ ಮಾಡಿರಬೇಕು ನೀವು. ಟ್ರಾನ್ಸ್ಫರ್ ಯಾವಾಗ ಆಗಿರಬೇಕು ಅಂದರೆ ಅದು ಪ್ರೀವಿಯಸ್ ಇಯರಲ್ಲಿ ಆಗಿರಬೇಕು. ಆ ಪ್ರೀವಿಯಸ್ ಇಯರಲ್ಲಿ ಟ್ರಾನ್ಸ್ಫರ್ ಆಗಿರೋದ್ರಿಂದ ನಿಮಗೆ ಪ್ರಾಫಿಟು ಅಥವಾ ಗೇನ್ ಏನಾದರೂ ಆಗಿರಬೇಕು. ಆಗ ನಾವು ಅದನ್ನ ಕ್ಯಾಪಿಟಲ್ ಗೇನ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ ಕನ್ಸಿಡರ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ. ನೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಫಾಲೋಯಿಂಗ್, ಸೊ ಆಸ್ ಐ ಟೋಲ್ಡ್ ಯು ದಟ್ ಟ್ರಾನ್ಸ್ಫರ್ ಇಸ್ ನೆಸೆಸರಿ. ವಾಟ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಆಲ್ ವಿಲ್ ಬಿ ನಾಟ್ ಕನ್ಸಿಡರ್ಡ್ ಆ್ಯಸ್ ಟ್ರಾನ್ಸ್ಫರ್. ಯಾವುದನ್ನ ನಾವು ಟ್ರಾನ್ಸ್ಫರ್ ಅಂತ ಕನ್ಸಿಡರ್ ಮಾಡೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಒನ್ ಇಸ್ transfer in the scheme of amalgamation. Amalgamation means when two company merges together, the assets also will be merged. In such case it is not considered as transfer. Suppose next is transfer of debentures or bonds into shares. Some companies will issue convertible debentures. So that convertible debentures, after a certain period of time, it will be converted into equity shares or bonds. If such is the transfer, that conversion if it is there, then it is not considered as transfer. Transfer of asset in kind at the time of liquidation. Suppose the company is in a stage of liquidation. So when company comes to liquidation, all the assets will be sold and the liabilities will be cleared off. At that time, if any property is given to the creditors, that cannot be considered as a transfer. Next, transfer of asset by a parent company to its own subsidiary company. So parent company and subsidiary companies are there. If that parent company transfers its asset to the subsidiary company, that cannot be considered as a transfer. Okay. Next is transfer of asset under the gift or will. Yes, any for the gift purpose, if you have gifted a land, gifted a building, etc., or by will. Will is a legalized forum. So through will or gift, if you are able to transfer the asset, it is not considered as transfer. Transfer of capital asset at the time of partition of HUF. Suppose you are dividing the into undivided family, and at the time of divided, even the assets are also get divided, then such assets cannot be considered as capital asset. Next, what is the meaning of capital asset? It is any property that is held by the assessee which is not a part of business or profession. So any property if the assessee is having which is not used for business or profession, such as vehicles, patents, trademarks, leasehold rights, machinery, jewelry, shares, debentures, units of UTIs, UTI and mutual funds, securities, all kinds of property, whatever the assessee holds is called as capital asset. There are four types of capital asset. So first one is financial assets, second one is depreciable assets, third one is unlisted shares, fourth one is other assets. Unlisted shares in land and building, fourth one is other assets. In the capital assets, there are two types. One is short-term capital assets and second one is long-term capital asset. So, under financial assets, how do we divide whether the asset is short-term or long-term? If the asset is held by the assessee less than 1 year, then it is considered as short-term capital asset. If the assessee holds any financial assets for more than 1 year, it is known as long-term capital asset. So financial assets includes shares, debentures, etc. ಸೊ ಅಸೆಸಿ ಏನಾದರೂ ಫಿನಾನ್ಷಿಯಲ್ ಅಸೆಟ್ಸ್ನ 1 ವರ್ಷಕ್ಕಿಂತ ಕಡಿಮೆ ಅವನ ಹತ್ರ ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ರೆ ಅದನ್ನು ಶಾರ್ಟ್ ಟರ್ಮ್ ಕ್ಯಾಪಿಟಲ್ ಅಸೆಟ್ ಅಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ. ಒಂದು ವೇಳೆ ಅಸೆಸಿ ಏನಾದರೂ ಫಿನಾನ್ಷಿಯಲ್ ಅಸೆಟ್ಸ್ನ ಮೋರ್ ದ್ಯಾನ್ 1 year ಅವನ ಬಳಿ ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದಾನೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ಅದನ್ನ ಲಾಂಗ್ ಟರ್ಮ್ ಕ್ಯಾಪಿಟಲ್ ಅಸೆಟ್ ಅಂತ ನಾವು ಕರಿತೀವಿ. Second one is depreciable assets. So any kinds of assets that attracts depreciation will come under this category. Depreciation is always considered as short-term capital assets. It is nowhere considered as long-term capital assets. It is only considered as STCA, that is short-term capital asset. ಯಾವುದೆಲ್ಲ ಅಸೆಟ್ ಡಿಪ್ರಿಸಿಯೇಷನ್ಗೆ ಒಳಗೊಡುತ್ತೋ ಅದೆಲ್ಲವನ್ನು ನಾವು ಡಿಪ್ರಿಷಿಯೇಬಲ್ ಅಸೆಟ್ಸ್ ಅಂತಲೇ ಕನ್ಸಿಡರ್ ಮಾಡೋದು. ಎಲ್ಲ ರೀತಿಯ ಡಿಪ್ರಿಷಿಯೇಬಲ್ ಅಸೆಟ್ಸ್ ಯಾವಾಗಲೂ ನಾವು ಶಾರ್ಟ್ ಟರ್ಮ್ ಕ್ಯಾಪಿಟಲ್ ಅಸೆಟ್ಸ್ ಅಂತಲೇ ಕನ್ಸಿಡರ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ. ನೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್, unlisted shares in land and building. So in unlisted shares in land and building, if the assessee holds this kind of asset for less than 2 years, then it is short term capital asset. If the assessee holds more than 2 years, then it is a long term capital asset. Other assets, ಈ ಮೂರು ಕ್ಯಾಟಗರಿಲಿ ಬರ್ದಿರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಅಸೆಟ್ನ ಅದರ್ ಅಸೆಟ್ಸ್ ಅಂತ ಟ್ರೀಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ. In other assets, if the assessee holds the property less than 3 years, it is short-term capital asset. If the assessee holds the property more than 3 years, it is considered as long-term capital asset. Please take a screenshot of this problem because this will be helpful for us to solve the problem. Next is, let us learn some important terms. First is sale consideration. So what is a sale consideration? The assessee, he is a seller here. The assessee sells the assets and he receives certain amount for that. That particular amount is considered as sale consideration. ಒಂದು ಅಸೆಸಿ ಪ್ರಾಪರ್ಟಿನ ಮಾರಿ ಏನು ದುಡ್ಡನ್ನು ಸಂಪಾದಿಸ್ತಾನೋ ಅದನ್ನು ನಾವಿಲ್ಲಿ ಸೇಲ್ಸ್ ಕನ್ಸಿಡರೇಷನ್ ಅಂತ ಕನ್ಸಿಡರ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ. ನೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಇಸ್ ಕಾಸ್ಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಅಕ್ವಿಸಿಷನ್. ಆ ಒಂದು ಅಸೆಸಿ ಯಾವ ಬೆಲೆಗೆ ಆ ಪ್ರಾಪರ್ಟಿನ ಕೊಂಡ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ನೋ ಆ ಒಂದು ಕಾಸ್ಟನ್ನ ನಾವಿಲ್ಲಿ ಕಾಸ್ಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಅಕ್ವಿಸಿಷನ್ ಅಂತ ಕನ್ಸಿಡರ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ. ಸೊ ದ ವ್ಯಾಲ್ಯೂ ಅಟ್ ವಿಚ್ ದ ಅಸೆಸಿ ಹ್ಯಾಡ್ ಪರ್ಚೇಸ್ಡ್ ದಟ್ ಪರ್ಟಿಕ್ಯುಲರ್ ಕ್ಯಾಪಿಟಲ್ ಅಸೆಟ್, that particular value becomes cost of acquisition. ಆಮೇಲೆ ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಹೇಳೋದು ಮತ್ತೆ ಸೇಲ್ ಕನ್ಸಿಡರೇಷನಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಾದರೂ ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾಂಪ್ ವ್ಯಾಲ್ಯೂ ಡ್ಯೂಟಿ ಅಂತ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ರೆ ಕ್ವಶನಲ್ಲಿ ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾಂಪ್ ಡ್ಯೂಟಿ ವ್ಯಾಲ್ಯೂ ಅಂದರೆ ವಿ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಟು ಆಲ್ವೇಸ್ ಕನ್ಸಿಡರ್ ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾಂಪ್ ಡ್ಯೂಟಿ ವ್ಯಾಲ್ಯೂ. ಇದು ಹೆಂಗೆ ಅಂತ ನಾನು ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ ಸಾಲ್ವ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ನಿಮಗೆ ಹೇಳ್ಕೊಡ್ತೀನಿ. ನೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ is how do we determine the cost of acquisition? There are again various scenarios of determining the cost of acquisition. First one is if capital asset is purchased after 1st April 2001. Suppose you have purchased capital asset after 1st of April 2001, then whatever the purchase price will be there, that particular purchase price will be considered as cost of acquisition. Suppose the capital asset is acquired under gift or will, then the cost of previous year, in the previous year what was the cost of asset, that particular price will be considered as cost of acquisition. Suppose if the assessee or the previous owner acquires the asset before 1st April 2001. So before 1st April 2001, if you have purchased a capital asset, you will compare two items. One is the actual cost of purchase, second one is fair market value as on 1/4/2001. Out of these two value, whichever is higher value, you will write it as cost of acquisition. Don't worry, this you will understand once we start solving the problem. Just remember this much: if the asset is purchased before 1/4/2001, two values you will compare. Next, sometimes what happened is the sale of land and building and all, it doesn't take place in one single day. First you will give the advance, take the papers, do a legal check on all the documents, and then have the final settlement. Sometimes what happens, the buyer would have given the advance for you, okay, and he will take the documents, will check it out, and he might feel that the property is not having proper documentation, so he may forfeit the agreement, he may cancel the agreement. Such times the advance money he will not get it back. So how do we treat that kind of advance money? So any advance money which is received before the previous year 2013-14 ಗಿನ ಮುಂಚೆ ಯಾವ್ದಾದ್ರು ಅಡ್ವಾನ್ಸ್ ಮನಿನ ರಿಸೀವ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ, ಆ ಒಂದು ವ್ಯಾಲ್ಯೂ ಏನು ಫೋರ್ಫೀಟ್ ಆಗಿರುತ್ತೋ ಅದನ್ನು ಕಾಸ್ಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಅಕ್ವಿಸಿಷನ್ ಇಂದ ಮೈನಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ. That particular amount of advance which is forfeited will be deducted from cost of acquisition. Suppose if forfeiture is done after that particular year, that is from 14-15 year, then that particular forfeiture amount will be shown in income from other sources. So just take a screenshot of this. This is also very important. This you require while solving the problem. Next comes as cost of improvements. So sometimes what happens, when I purchase the house property, the only ground floor will be there. I will add first floor for that, second floor. I would have done certain improvements for that. So whatever the expenses I have incurred in making all those improvements on additions to my capital asset, that will be considered as cost of improvement. And one more point you should remember is improvements done before 1/4/2001 should be ignored. Only the improvements done after that particular date should be taken into consideration. Transfer expenses. There will be certain transfer expenses. You would have appointed a broker, you should give him commission. Then legal expenses will be there, the registration charges, traveling charges, okay, and whatever the cost of stamped paper and all. So all this transfer expenses we will minus it, okay. These are the transfer expenses. Next comes very important. This slide is very important. Take a screenshot of this particular slide, because for, as I told you, there are two types of asset: short term capital asset and long term capital assets. Short term capital asset does not attract indexation. Indexation means finding the present value of the money which was which was shown as what you like. Suppose example, I have done a cost of improvement in 2002. That time I spent 50,000, but same improvement if I have done in the previous year, the expenses would be more. So that to balance that present value of money, we use indexation. So for short term capital asset there is no indexation because you have the asset for less amount of period of time. But for long term capital asset, for long term capital assets, indexation will be applied. ಎಲ್ಲೆಲ್ಲೆಲ್ಲ ಎಲ್ ಟಿ ಸಿ ಎ ಬರುತ್ತೋ ಅಲ್ಲೆಲ್ಲ ಇಂಡೆಕ್ಸೇಷನ್ ಬರುತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ಎಸ್ ಟಿ ಸಿ ಎಗೆ ನಾವು ಕೇವಲ ಕಾಸ್ಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಅಕ್ವಿಸಿಷನ್, ಕಾಸ್ಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಇಂಪ್ರೂವ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಹಾಕ್ತೀವಿ. ಬಟ್ ಎಲ್ ಟಿ ಸಿ ಎಗೆ ನಾವು ಇಂಡೆಕ್ಸ್ಡ್ ಕಾಸ್ಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಅಕ್ವಿಸಿಷನ್ ಮತ್ತು ಇಂಡೆಕ್ಸ್ಡ್ ಕಾಸ್ಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಇಂಪ್ರೂವ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಅಂತ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ. Just take a screenshot of this formula. I will teach you in a very depth way once I start solving the problem. This is a inflection index. So this is an inflection rate. So ಇದಿಷ್ಟು ನೀವು ನೆನ್ಪಿಟ್ಕೊಳ್ಬೇಕಾಗುತ್ತೆ. Just take a screenshot of this, and when I start solving the problem, you keep this particular CII rates, you write it in a sheet of paper and just keep it. Sometimes for section C they may give in the question paper and sometimes they may not give, so you should remember. So just take the screenshot of this. This is must for solving the problem. So this was about the introduction to capital gains. From my next videos I'll be solving some set of problems which I'll cover previous year question paper problems and expected problems also. Just practice all those sums I'll be uploading. You'll be easily able to solve the question asked in the examination. Thank you for watching the video. I'll come back with the next video as soon as possible.